Okay, this video is a video that I've put together to test out the audio capabilities of my camera, and I have shot some video before with this exact setup, and I wasn't too happy with the audio quality, so I ended up going out and buying a external microphone. And so each one of these clips will be a variation on what sound source I have and stuff, and then I can compare the differences with each of the clips, and I'll explain as I get to the clips exactly which ones are what's what. But right now, basically it's just the camera's internal microphone that's getting the sound here. I guess I should describe this microphone before I hook it up. It's a Shure Lenshopper VP83F. It's a super cardioid microphone. It's a shotgun, basically, this tube that goes underneath this thing. And it has a fairly tight directional pickup radius. It's only 70 degrees that it's going to be able to pick up, which means that sound from the side or the back is rejected. It still picks up some of that, but it does a better job of rejecting the background noise than, say, the built-in microphone on the camera, which is why one of these is favored. It's also got a better sound quality. The mics themselves are quite a bit higher quality. This microphone can actually be mounted on the accessory shoe of my camera. It doesn't have to, sit out there. But the nice thing about this is that it can also be mounted on a tripod, so I can just set it in front of me and use it like a, external mic. And this particular one, it just at the bottom of this shock mount, it has a 1/4-inch thread, so it's kind of nice in that it just connects to any old cheap tripod. And a number of the different camera mount microphones out there use a different thread, and so you have to have an adapter. It's not a big deal, but it's just a matter of buying that and then realizing, oh, it doesn't work with my tripod, and then I got to go buy an adapter. And I kind of looked out for that, and then was happy to find out that this one didn't need the adapter. It has a cable, and this cable can then be connected to the microphone input of the camera, and then it just basically replaces the camera's microphone, and that's what I will be doing in the next clip. The other features with this is that it has I think that's a motorcycle going by, and as I want to point out that while I'm using the internal microphone, I'm just in my backyard, and just noises around the neighborhood here are really obvious. Now maybe it's because I've got my earphones, my headphones volume a little bit too high, but it just seems like I'm getting a lot of noise there. We'll see when I actually load this up on my computer what it's going to sound like. Anyhow, this microphone, the Shure Lenshopper VP83F, it has a windscreen, a foam windscreen on it, and that's going to help reduce some of the rumble that you get from the noise. Now, if it's really windy out, it's probably not going to be very effective, and in that case, you might need to put another item on top of this. So you can get what are called it's like a synthetic fur cover, and they're called a wind muff, or sometimes referred to as a dead cat, and it just slides over this and it looks like a furry thing, and it does a better job of taking out that loud wind noise. Now, the disadvantage to it is that it also kind of muffles your own voice. So that, and as you can probably hear, that's our basset hound background there, being brought inside and probably barking. He's barking so he can get a treat. Anyhow, so the other thing about this is that it comes with a shock mount, and so if you do have it mounted on your camera and you're walking around with it, or if you're just using the zoom feature on your lens, it doesn't pick up that mechanical noise as much as it would as the mics on the internal mic on the camera. And the challenge with this microphone, though, is I really struggle. This is like my third take. I did one yesterday and it was completely messed up, and I did one this morning and I did something kind of screwy with it too. So anyhow, the challenge with this microphone, and I'm sure it's typical of any of these sort of shotgun mics and stuff, is that you can't setting the volume level or the mic input, the mic gain level, is done on the back of the mic, and there's a little LCD readout, and then you have this sort of toggle control that allows you to switch to different menu settings and then to adjust those particular things, and in this case it would be the mic gain. Well, you want to get that level somewhere between minus 6 dB and minus 12 dB, and so you have to kind of look at the meters and see what you're doing, and you can't do that while speaking into the mic, because the mic has to be pointed toward you, and so you can't just like hold it, adjust it while you're talking, because it's rejecting the voice in the back. Even though it's picking up some of it, the levels are going to be quite a bit different. So you kind of have to preset that and maybe work with somebody else that can then tell you and do a sound check beforehand. And that's kind of what I did, is I had to have my wife kind of look at those meters while I was speaking at a similar distance. So if you're all by yourself and you're trying to set your sound levels, it's a little bit trickier. With setting the sound levels with the camera aren't quite as difficult, because my camera has a rear swivel LCD, and I can twist it around so that it's front facing, so I can see what I'm doing, and I can have some information on that screen, including my microphone levels and stuff, so I can kind of see right now what's going on with that. The other thing about this particular mic, and it's probably, again, it's pretty typical of shotgun mics in this price range, is that it's a mono mic. It's not a stereo mic, which, not being a pro here, I probably don't appreciate the different, I sort of think that if you're recording audio, especially if you're out and about and there happens to be like a busker or something, and you want to record that, or if your child is in a school play or a musical performance, you kind of want to get that stuff in stereo, and so this is a mono mic and it won't do that. However, you can buy stereo mics, but in this price range none of them really have great reviews, so I'm not sure if that how good those are. You have to take these reviews that you see on some of the websites like B&H and Sweetwater or Amazon. You have to take them with a grain of salt, because many times people that write into those are really pretty negative about stuff. But and I did a lot of homework, or I searched around and created a spreadsheet to compare the different features of these microphones and the price points, and I was originally just going to get the VP83, and I decided to get the VP83F because of additional flexibility. It has the ability to record the audio on a micro SD card, and so I can set this thing up completely independent of my camera and have it record. And The advantage to that is that the internal recording on the microphone to the micro SD card is 24-bit 48 kilohertz, and the preamp on my camera, when I hook it up to the camera, it's going to record it at 16-bit. So I get a little bit better resolution, bit depth on that when I'm recording it internally. And it also allows me to sort of like, I mean, I could have the camera 10 feet away and the microphone right here. I don't have to have a long cable to connect to it because I can record directly to that. Now, the thing about recording to this and then connected to my camera is that you've got to be able to then copy those files onto your computer and then sync the audio from the microphone to the audio that's in the camera. And I'm going to be doing that a little bit later. So anyhow, I'm going to now switch over out of the current setup that I have right now, where I'm using the microphone on the camera, and I'm going to switch to the mic, the Shure Lenshopper. So that's, oh, and then the other thing, I'll mention this maybe in the next video when I talk about my camera a little bit more. Okay, now I'm on clip number 2, and now I have the Shure Lenshopper VP83F connected directly to my camera. And so I'm no longer using the internal microphone. I've substituted that for this shotgun mic. And the microphone is still going through the camera's sound circuitry, the mic preamp for that, and so there's a little disadvantage to that because I've read somewhere that Canon's mic preamps aren't the greatest, but I don't know. I think that's when it's comparing, say, the preamps of a camera like this with a sort of high-end video camera, you know, dedicated film, you know, thing, that the sound capabilities of these aren't as sophisticated. And so anyhow, but now at least you're getting, I think, a slightly better quality here from the Lenshopper. And the Lenshopper, I think I mentioned earlier, it has the ability to record internally. It has a micro SD card slot, and so you can set that to record, and then you can save that file and replace that with the sound that's on the camera. And the advantage to the Lenshopper's recording is that it's done in 24-bit, whereas the camera's preamp is doing the audio recordings in 16-bit. They're both 48 kilohertz, but 24 versus 16. And one of the other things that you have to do when you're working with an external mic is you have to make sure that you've got the input levels, the things set up properly. And so the camera refers to it as recording levels, and the camera refers to it as the mic gain. And it's not clear as to me, I'm still learning about this, but it's not clear as to how you balance between the two, where you set the gain on the microphone and the recording level on the camera, and how you get that. The key thing is that the peaks, when your resultant sound file, you don't want it to clip. And you don't want it to be so low that when you bring it into your computer and into your video editing software that you have to pull up the sound, because when you pull up quiet passages, then you're also pulling up the noise floor, the background noise. So you want to have the peaks go, you know, somewhere between 0 and minus 12 dB, kind of like right at 6 dB, minus 6 dB or something. So, and the other thing is that this microphone has the ability to make adjustments between low, medium, and high sensitivity for the preamp on the camera. and I'm not sure exactly what the best setting is. I know that when it was set to the default, which I think was high, I was having, it seemed like the input was sort of blowing out. So I set it to medium, but what I probably need to do is just run another test and compare between low, medium, and high and see what that does. I've heard that the preamps on the EOS R are pretty sensitive. I've read that somewhere, but I can't find that information anymore. And I think I came across it, quite a while ago, and I don't really know if that's true or if that's was referring to a different camera. Now, as far as the Canon EOS R, it's currently it's set to 1080p. It's capable of doing 4K, but I'm setting it to 1080p. Some people have complained about the 4K capabilities of this camera, and it's because it doesn't take full advantage of the full-size sensor that is in there. It crops it down. But I've heard that if you use an EFS lens, a crop lens with it, it works great. I don't have an EFS lens, so but anyhow, the other thing about 4K is it generates these pretty big files, and I think you need I might need a more powerful computer to process those. I've got a computer that's a few years old now. My laptop is an MSI. It was a gaming, sort of designed for gaming, but a lot of gaming laptops are pretty powerful, and so I can use it for photo or video editing as well. But it only has 16 gigabytes of RAM. So maybe when you get up to 4K, you need at least 32. I don't know. But the computer, my laptop, has a dedicated NVIDIA 1060 graphics card, and that might not be powerful enough for. I mean, I know it's great for viewing 4K, and the monitor on my laptop is 4K. It's a 17-inch screen, 17.3-inch 4K screen, and it's great because it's also got a wide color gamut. It's 100% Adobe RGB. But again, to process these files and manipulate them in a video editing program and to render them, I may need a little bit more horsepower. So I'm kind of sticking with 1080p for now. And so in the camera, I have it set to a frame rate of 29.97. And then there are two choices for video compression. And one of them is called IPF, and it generates the smallest files. And it uses AAC for audio compression, which is the advanced audio codec, and it's, I think, what may have been developed by Apple, but it's a audio compression technology that's a little more modern than MP3, so it does a better job, cleaner job of compression. When people say they can't tell the difference between a 320 kilobit MP3 and the original WAV file, they may say something like you can't tell the difference between a 160 kbit AAC file and the original WAV file. So it does a higher quality at lower compression rates. Or anyhow, it is doing compression there, and audio compression with the IPF option. The other video compression choice is called All-I, and that uses less compression, so it ends up with a better looking video, slightly better looking, but it also generates larger file sizes. And with the storage capabilities of our computers these days, I'm not so worried about that particular difference. The other advantage to it is that the audio on the All-I file is not compressed. It's just a basic LPCM file. It's a 16-bit 48 kilohertz audio file, WAV file. And so when I do a test with clip 4, I'll be comparing the sound of the microphone, the sound being recorded by the microphone, to the microphone's micro SD card, which is recording at 24-bit, and then the sound that I'm recording just like right now, with the microphone hooked up to the camera, which is 16-bit. And it'd be interesting to see, toggle back and forth between 24 and 16-bit and see if I notice any difference. With my hearing loss, my old man hearing loss, I probably won't even notice the difference there. The other changes that I've made to the default settings on my camera is that the sound recording is set to manual as opposed to automatic. And there's an automatic setting with the camera that allows it to adjust the sound recording level based on the noise in the area. So if it's quiet, it'll raise the noise floor and to try to keep it within a certain range. And I don't really want it to do that. I don't know why you'd even want to do that with the internal mics. I think that would just make a little bit more noise. But that's the default setting, and when I was making videos weeks ago with my wife, I didn't know any better, and it was doing that. And so the audio did sound kind of weird. But we got the job done. The other settings that they have here is that you can toggle or enable a wind filter thing, and so that basically allows you, and I could have been using it before when I was just recording with the internal microphones, but that rumble that you get from the background, from wind noises and stuff, this will sort of set a filter to sort of knock some of that out. And then there's also an attenuator, and that's supposed to tamp down some of the peaks, some of the really loud noises. So both of those things are turned off at this point. And so if I was relying on the internal mic, I might keep those on, but it might be something to test to see how that would work. The other camera settings that I wanted to point out is that I've got basically my camera set to movie mode manual, and I use manual settings also when I'm taking stills. I'm used to it, and so I find it just as quick to kind of make the quick adjustments and analyze sort of a scene and what I need to do when I'm in manual mode. And so that's why I'm here. And there's other things. The only thing I'll ever take out of manual mode is sometimes if I'm going in and out of sort of a bright area with a lot of shadow and stuff like that, I may set the ISO to auto ISO. Now, with the movie mode, when it's set to all eye compression, auto ISO is not one of the options. So if I really needed to do auto ISO, I'd have to switch over to the IPF compression mode. So I usually like to keep my ISO when I'm outside in a bright environment. I'll set it to 100, and that's where I'm set right now. Inside, I set it to 400. Now, the other thing I like to do now, I've learned a little bit more about, and I'm still trying to figure out the whole thing on color grading, is I've got my camera set to Canon C-Log, and when it comes to the ISO, I've read somewhere that if you're shooting C-Log that you should set your ISO to 400. I don't know why and where I heard that and why that would make a big difference. If you're outside and you have to bump up your ISO to 400, it might just be too bright. As you know, there's the exposure triangle between ISO, shutter speed, and aperture, and so it's kind of a balance that you have to keep. And so if you're locking your ISO to 400, it's kind of, you have to compromise a few other things. All right, and so then the aperture, that basically also is dependent on the lighting conditions and the lens that I have attached to my camera. This lens is a RF lens. It's one of their Canon newer lenses. It's a 35mm f1.8. Wonderful lens. Inexpensive, or relatively inexpensive, but since it's an RF mount, it's not cheap, but it's a really good lens. I like to keep the focal length, I like to have a fairly shallow depth of field. And so if I can, I'll set the aperture to something like, if possible, f1.8. That gives me a lot of good focus on my face or on my eyes. and it then blurs out the background and stuff. And so, but that may not be possible again if you have the aperture set so wide that all the light is blown out. And one of the tests I did earlier today, that's the mistake I made. So I'm redoing this at a slightly different aperture. So I'm currently set to f3.5. I can f4 is fine too, but I went down to f3.5. So that again is one of the variables that I can play around with. And then the other thing is the shutter speed. I usually set the shutter speed to double the frame rate. And so my frame rate 29.97 or round up to 30, double that to 1/60th. So I've currently set the shutter speed to 1/60th. I've read that, and I think what do they call it? The 180 rule or something. If you set your shutter speed to twice double the frame rate, then you're supposed to get the most natural looking motion blur. So that's going to apply if you're like shooting an event where there's a lot of movement and walking and stuff like that. If you set your shutter speed too high, like at 1/1000th or something like that, it's going to be sort of unnatural. The movement doesn't look quite right. There is no motion blur, but I don't know. I'm going to play around with that in the future when I get into video and I can get out on the street with my camera a little bit more. What I do know is that sometimes when I go out and it's really, really bright out, that the shutter speed at 1/60th and my ISO at, say 100, and my aperture, I either have to really bring it down to like a f13 or something like that, or more, but it still might be too bright. So then what I'll do is I'll try to get the shutter speed at a multiple of what it was. And so there are no multiples of 30 that seem to work pretty well, so I just kind of round it up, so might go to 1/125th or 1/250th. So that's it for my camera settings. Okay, so I'm gonna stop this, and that should be it. Then we'll have the other videos, the other clips. Okay, this is clip number 3, and basically what I'm doing is this video is being I've got, let me get my thoughts together here. What I've got here is my camera is recording the audio and video using the camera's internal microphone, and simultaneously I'm using the Shure Lenshopper VP83F to record the audio to the micro SD card in the microphone. And so I will have 2 audio tracks to work with. And as you can tell right now while I'm doing this, there's a neighbor somewhere, maybe next door or across the street, that is mowing their lawn, and I'm getting a lot of that background noise into the recording. And this is something that should be interesting to see how it comes out and see how it affects the audio quality. I may end up doing this over because it's just too annoying. But anyhow, so like I said, I have 2 audio tracks. The one that's going to be part of my MP4 file that is the internal mic's recording, and the one that is the 24-bit version of the track of this on the microphone. And then after this is saved, and then I'm going to load it up on my computer and bring it into DaVinci Resolve and use a utility that will allow me to sync up those 2 audio sources and then swap out one for the other. And what I'll probably do is I'll make cuts so that I can go back and forth between the camera's audio and the microphone and the Shure microphone, or maybe I'll make copies and then just go, so you can see the exact same sort of footage and then played multiple times. I'll see how that works in post. Okay, thank you for turning off the damn lawnmower. Okay, and so anyhow, that's going on right now. So I'll stop this and we'll be able to go to the next clip. Okay, this is clip number 4, and I think what I forgot to explain a couple things, or mention a couple things in clip number 3 that I'll cover real quickly. As you can probably tell from looking at the image, it's not quite as bright. I did adjust the aperture from f2 to f4, so there's that. I think there's still enough, of a blur in the background with this lens that it still looks pretty good at f4. And then the other thing that I've done is, that I forgot to mention, is the clap that I'm doing at the start of these videos. So basically what happens is I'll start the record on that, then I'll start the recording on the camera, and then I will clap my hand, and it's that clapping now sound and the visual of my hands coming together that I will use to help sync up the audio and the video. Now, with DaVinci Resolve, you sometimes don't even really need to have that kind of sound or visual indicator to, try to use the sync. There's a utility that allows you to allows you to select the two audio tracks, matching audio tracks, and it will automatically analyze the waveforms and then synchronize them, and then you can substitute one for the other. I tried that, and I had mixed results, and I think part of it is because the duration of the different recordings is enough to throw it off. So I mean, the procedure that I follow might not be the correct way to do this, but that's the only way I can think of it. So I start by pressing the record button on the mic. So I kind of reach around it, correct it, and then set my mic in the position that I want. And then then I pick the record button on the camera. So the camera has started several seconds later than the audio. And then I'll do the clap and stuff that you saw at the beginning. But because of the duration differences, it may be kind of making it a little bit harder for DaVinci to match things up. So the other thing that I need to mention is that when I'm recording to I think I mentioned this before, that the recording on the external mic is 24-bit, and right now I'm recording simultaneously using the microphone as both a recording device and recording to the mic's micro SD card. But I also have the microphone connected to my camera, and it's using the microphone as its input as opposed to the internal microphone on the camera. And in this case I can kind of compare maybe what the difference is between that 24-bit file that's being recorded to the mic versus the 16-bit file that's being recorded to my camera. And I may not even be able to tell the difference. I used to have what I considered really good hearing, and now that I'm an old fart, I have lost a significant amount of my hearing ability, especially in the high frequencies. So chances are I won't be able to hear a difference, but maybe this noise floor will be a little bit different. So that's basically it now on this test. And so the next trick is to basically load it up into DaVinci Resolve and try to get things matched. In a future video, I think what I'm going to do is kind of play around with this even further and try to see what the difference is between some of these settings while I'm doing something else. Like maybe if there is a music performance, or maybe if I'm just like walking around doing a nature walk and stuff, I'd like to kind of evaluate the differences between these two, the microphone and the built-in microphone. And maybe the nature sounds and stuff would be much better with the shotgun mic. My guess is that that's the case. I also notice right now, because I'm listening, I've got headphones in and I can listen to the audio this way. The noise floor, the background noise is a lot less when I'm using my microphone when compared to how loud it was with the built-in camera. So anyhow, that's it. Thank you, or whatever. Subscribe. I don't have that kind of a channel, but maybe in the future, right? All right. I have now had the chance of taking those clips that I did earlier, and I loaded them onto my computer and imported them into DaVinci Resolve, and it worked out pretty well, actually. Originally, when I was trying to synchronize the two different audio sources, I was having trouble. I don't know what I did wrong, but the last time I did it, it worked perfectly. I just basically picked the audio-video file, the MP4 file that came off of the camera, and the WAV file from the microphone, and then just used the auto sync audio feature within DaVinci Pro, and it matched up the waveform perfectly. So it's actually quite easy to do. So I am currently going to basically, I'm using my Lenshopper microphone, the Shure Lenshopper VP83F, and it's connected to the camera, so it's, I'm using the mic instead of the built-in microphone, and I'm also recording to the mic, and so I still will have two different sources to choose from. I didn't really tell so basically the test results seem to indicate that obviously the Lenshopper does do a better job of rejecting background noise, and than the microphone on the camera. It also sounds a little deeper. I don't really have a great sense for the sound quality of the microphones and whether or not the Lenshopper sounds significantly better than, say, even the mics on the camera. But because of the sort of the more, I don't know, the depth of sound that it has, it seems to be better. And I don't know, I couldn't really tell that much of a difference between the quality of the sound recorded to the microphone in 24-bit versus the microphone being routed through the camera's preamp, which then records the audio at 16-bit. And again, that might be because my hearing just isn't good enough to be able to, detect the difference between the two. The other thing that's a little bit tricky when you bring these different sources into DaVinci, and this is probably another limitation of mine, is that it's hard to judge the sound differences and the quality differences because they all seem to be at different the sound level seems to be different. So, you know, if you get the sound levels completely matched up, then it's, you know, a little easier to say, oh, this one sounds better than that. But if one of them is louder than the other, it's hard to say. And, you know, so I'm constantly trying to adjust the sound levels to get them to match up. And I think built into DaVinci, there's probably a better way to do it. I used the normalization utility to try to get all of those things sort of in line. But anyhow, I'm kind of a beginner with all of this stuff, so I think maybe after I dig in a little bit deeper and go through some of the tutorials that are dedicated to audio, maybe I'll be able to figure that out. But right now, when you watch this video, the sound levels may not be matching correctly. So anyhow, overall, I'm pretty satisfied. I'm really happy with the way I was able to synchronize the two sources. That worked out really great, and that was one of the key things that I wanted to be able to do. And it is clear that this Lenshopper does reject sort of the ambient, the noise in the background. Again, it's another sort of calm day. There's a little bit of a breeze, so there shouldn't be a lot of wind noise. So I have yet to use this microphone under windy conditions, and so, you know, so far I don't think that it was a, you know, that something like the dead cat was something that I need to put on this thing. One other thing I mentioned earlier in one of the last clips was that I have a setting on the microphone that relates to the camera sensitivity, and currently I think it's set to high, and I think that's the default setting, and I'm going to turn this off, stop this one, and then I'm going to try setting it to medium and then to low. Oh, and by the way, this particular video is not being recorded on the camera, partly because I forgot to push the record button, but also because the real purpose of this is really simply to test, well, to give you my conclusion, and then to also maybe do that quick test between the camera sensitivity. And the camera sensitivity, it wouldn't, I don't think that setting would make any difference on the audio that's recorded to the microphone's micro SD card. So anyhow, I'm going to stop this, shift it down from high to medium, and then run another test, talk a little bit, and see how that works. So I'll stop. Okay, so I just switched the camera sensitivity from high to medium, and we'll see if that makes a big difference. The meters look like they're a little bit lower, so it looked like when I was the meters on the camera, that is, and I didn't adjust anything on camera. That's the only change I've made there, and so we'll see. You know, when I bring this up on my computer, maybe I can see a dramatic difference between the levels and all of that. And the documentation for this doesn't really explain how that setting, you know, what actual changes it's making to the circuitry and this signal path, whether it's using anything to alter the sound. Oh, and the other thing I wanted to mention is that I have not changed the mic gain setting on the camera since yesterday either. So I am, again, I mentioned how you're sort of, you can't really see the controls while you're speaking. You have to work with somebody else that can then, you know, when you're speaking to the microphone, then you can look at the meters and make those adjustments. Well, I did that yesterday with my wife, and I haven't done that since then. So the mic gain settings are the same. Shouldn't be a problem because the conditions are very similar, and the microphone is basically at about the same distance. I have it set about 2 feet away from me, so um, that's that. And so then now I'm going to stop this little clip, and then the last one will be set to sensitivity of low. So I started out, the first part of this was at sensitivity high. This one's now sensitivity is medium, and I will stop. Okay, I'm back, and now the sensitivity is set at low. And it clearly looks like the meters are a lot lower now. So, um, interesting. So yeah, I guess it makes sense. I sort of thought, well, if you set it at high, yeah, that that should be that should be fine. Okay, well, so that's it. I'm gonna then stop this video and or stop this clip and then um, copy the files onto my computer and take a look at it, and that's it. So, and then this is the end of this whole series of tests, and I can, like I can, I think I can already tell you right now what the differences are between the high, medium, and low. I still need to probably read up on what you know, um, I noticed that when it's set to high, the meters on the camera were practically clipping, and but I could see they weren't. It wasn't flashing red, so it was probably pretty high. Um, when set on medium, they look like they're right in the correct range, and I think that's how I had it set yesterday, was on medium. So the initial testing that I did was based on a camera out setting of medium, and then the adjustments that were made on the sound level, microphone level on the camera were based upon that. Um, and now it's at low. So in this case, I'll probably have to bump up the sound in DaVinci Pro, and you know, but I don't think it's pretty clear that how that feature works. I wasn't sure until I actually tried it, so that was kind of a useful thing. Anyhow, this is the end of the whole audio testing. My conclusion basically is that I think the Lenshopper Pro, I'm glad I bought it. It's a good investment. It does improve the quality of the sound significantly when compared to the camera's onboard sound, the built-in mics. In fact, Canon, they're pretty clear about, in their documentation, even in the user's guide for this camera, it basically encourages you to buy a $250 stereo shotgun mic that is sold by Canon, and that that seems to me like an acknowledgement that they know that their built-in mics are not ideal, and that's probably the case with. Why am I losing? Am I losing? Okay, there we go. That's probably the case with Nikon, Sony, everybody else. I doubt any of them have really phenomenal, built-in microphones. That's why everybody that does YouTube videos or whatever, always see that their gear shows that they've got a Rode or some other kind of shotgun mic on their camera. And then you see bloggers or vloggers, they have desktop mics, like, that they use. And then so that's another reason why I did this, is that I'm going to play around a little bit more with video, and I wanted to have decent quality sound. Anyhow, I think it's a pretty good investment. I will probably just connect it to the camera and use that 16-bit, because I didn't really notice that much of a difference between the 24-bit recorded to the microphone versus the 16-bit going through the camera's secret circuitry. You know, again, it's level matching that would do it. And I maybe, you know, either way, if I remember to pick the record button, all I know is that the synchronization was relatively easy, so it's a handy feature. Oh, and it'll be great if I'm in a situation where I have, you know, I'm far enough away with the camera and I have somebody using the mic 10, 12 feet away, then they just record to the you know, they pick the record button on the microphone. That'll be perfect. That's going to work out really well. So anyhow, I'm going to put this last file on the computer, bring it up, finish that video that I put together in DaVinci Pro. And as you can see, this has been uploaded to YouTube, to my own channel, and I'm sharing it but this is not sort of, you know, meant to be a review of either my camera or the shotgun mic, nor is it meant to be a how-to. It's just me rambling. As you can tell, this is a much longer video than you probably enjoyed watching. If you are watching this, I apologize for that. And it's basically just for me to run these tests and give me a chance to sort of play around with the features. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and maybe I'll put up some more videos in the future. Maybe they'll be a little bit more how-to or whatever. Anyhow, that's it. Goodbye. So long. Farewell. Auf Wiedersehen.